Your own body was once the ultimate ruler of the world. For thousands of years, the fundamental units of civilization were not abstract numbers, but the human form itself. The length of a foot, the span of a hand, the distance from elbow to fingertip, these were the original standards that built pyramids, mapped the heavens, and forged empires. This deep history is etched into the very fabric of our world, a hidden code of forgotten measures. You will discover how these ancient systems of measurement silently orchestrated the rise of cities, controlled the flow of wealth, and encoded cosmic beliefs into stone. How did a single royal cubit hold the key to Egypt's architectural perfection? And what secret knowledge allowed the Maya to measure time across millions of years? What does it truly mean to measure our world? That farmer pacing his field and that merchant measuring his cloth were using more than just their bodies. They were using a universal human logic. The foot, the hand, and the cubit were not just convenient, they were deeply integrated into the rhythm of daily life. This created a world where measurement was a felt experience, not an abstract number on a tool. An Egyptian worker did not just move stone, he moved cubits of stone, a quantity he could physically comprehend with his own arm. This system wove a tangible thread between the human body, the work of human hands, and the resulting structure. The variation from one person's foot to another's was not a flaw in this early system, but rather a feature. It fostered a communal understanding rooted in shared physical experience. You knew your neighbor's stride was a little longer than your own, so when you helped him build a fence, you adjusted. This created a flexible, living standard that was negotiated and understood within a community. But what happens when a community grows into a city and a city grows into an empire? How do you collect taxes from 1,000 different farmers, each with their own slightly different pace? How do you build a temple so grand that it requires the labor of thousands, all needing to cut stones that fit together perfectly? The very intimacy of the human ruler became its greatest limitation. The personal foot and the local cubit could not scale to meet the demands of growing states and sprawling trade networks. This pressing need for consistency, for a measure that was the same for everyone, everywhere, is what forced the next great leap in our story, the leap from the body of a man to the command of a king. The solution to that problem of scale emerged not from a committee or a market, but from the throne. In the shadow of the pyramids, a new kind of power was measured, the power to define reality for an entire civilization. This was the birth of the royal cubit. Picture a master builder in the royal workshops of Memphis unrolling a rod of polished black granite. Its length was fixed, immutable, and absolute. This was the royal cubit, the standard against which every wall, every column, and every sacred chamber in Egypt would be measured. It was roughly 52.5 centimeters, a length believed to be divinely inspired, derived from the very proportions of the gods. This was no longer a measure based on any single person's arm. It was a measure decreed by the pharaoh, a physical manifestation of his will and his role as the maintainer of cosmic order. The state maintained these official cubit rods within the sanctity of temples, treating them not as simple tools but as sacred objects. Every regional governor, every local architect, had to ensure their own measuring rods were calibrated against this primary standard. This enforced uniformity was a revolutionary act of control. It meant that a stone quarried in Aswan and a stone carved near Giza would fit together perfectly in a temple wall hundreds of miles away. The system was incredibly sophisticated, subdivided into 7 palms and 28 digits, creating a versatile scale for everything from grand architecture to surveying the fertile fields along the Nile after the annual flood. The result of this divine standardization is still standing in the desert at Giza. The Great Pyramid is its ultimate testament. The consistency of its dimensions over its immense scale is not an accident. It is the product of a system where every worker, every engineer was literally on the same page, guided by the same sacred ruler. This was engineering as an act of state power and religious devotion. The precision was so profound that some researchers suggest the pyramid's base perimeter corresponds to a specific, elegant fraction of the Earth's own circumference. Whether by intention or incredible coincidence, it hints at a lost knowledge of measuring the world itself. By tethering their fundamental unit of length to a concept of divine order, the Egyptians achieved something remarkable. They created a stable, unchangeable standard that outlived generations of pharaohs, contributing directly to the breathtaking stability and longevity of their civilization. This idea of linking human measurement to the cosmos was not unique to the Nile Valley. Far across the world, another ancient people were looking to the heavens to build a system for measuring something even more elusive, the relentless flow of time itself. While the Egyptians were mastering the measurement of stone and space, a different kind of revolution was unfolding in the sun-baked cities between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Here, in the heart of Mesopotamia, the most valuable commodity was not monumental architecture but trust. In the bustling markets of ancient Ur, a merchant would not simply count coins. He would carefully weigh out silver shekels on a finely balanced scale to secure a shipment of grain. This was the birth of economic measurement, a system built not on the human body but on the immutable certainty of weight. The fundamental units were the shekel and the much larger talent, a single talent representing a staggering 3,600 shekels. This was not merely a set of numbers, it was the operational backbone for the world's first complex economies. It enabled standardized contracts that could be enforced across vast distances, predictable tax collection that filled royal granaries, and the very development of a credit economy where promises could be quantified and trusted. As one historian of economics noted, the invention of this standardized weight system was as revolutionary as the invention of writing itself, for it created the foundational trust necessary for commerce to flourish across empires. To ensure this trust was never broken, the state took a direct role. Official stone weights, often beautifully carved into the shapes of ducks or lions, were kept under guard in temples and palaces. These were the primary standards against which all other weights were measured. Using a false measure was not a simple misdemeanor, it was a severe offense against the king and the gods, undermining the very fabric of societal order. The value of these weights was anchored in the real world. A shekel of silver was directly tied to a specific quantity of barley, creating a tangible link between abstract currency and a staple food that everyone understood. This connection to a fundamental commodity provided a remarkable stability to these early economies. The system's importance is carved into history's first great legal code. The Code of Hammurabi explicitly sets prices for goods and wages for labor in precise amounts of shekels, demonstrating how the law itself relied entirely on this precise measurement framework to function. What does this meticulous regulation tell us about these first civilizations? It reveals that their greatest priority was not just building walls, but building a reliable, predictable system of exchange that could bind together thousands of people in a network of mutual economic interest. This invisible framework of weights and values was the true infrastructure that held empires together long before the first road was ever paved. That legionaries' measured pace became the relentless rhythm of an empire. Across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, the Roman mile, born from 1,000 double steps, did more than just measure space, it conquered it. This single, standardized unit was the invisible engine of Rome's logistical genius. A general in Gaul could plan a campaign knowing exactly how many days it would take legions to arrive from Italy, because the distance was not a vague guess but a precise number of miles. A merchant shipping olive oil from Hispania to Rome could calculate his costs and travel time with confidence. This shared spatial understanding, enforced by golden milestones that marked every 1,000 paces, wove a disparate collection of conquered territories into a single, manageable whole. The milestone itself was a powerful symbol, a permanent advertisement etched in stone that reminded every traveler, from senator to slave, of the empire's unyielding reach. But this mastery of distance was only one facet of a deeper obsession with precision. The Roman foot and its smaller division, the digit, were the building blocks of their engineering marvels. The architect Vitruvius detailed in his treatises the exact proportions needed for everything from a sturdy city wall to a graceful aqueduct. The soaring, water-bearing arches that still stand today were not products of brute force, but of rigorous geometry and standardized measurement. Each block of stone was cut to a specific dimension, ensuring it would lock perfectly into place with its neighbors, creating structures that have endured for 2 millennia. As historian A. Trevor Hodge observed, Roman engineering was the application of this rigorous measurement to the problems of empire. This logistical framework created a common world, where a mile in Britain was the same as a mile in Egypt, facilitating not just control but also communication and cultural exchange. The ghost of this system remains with us, as many modern European roads still faithfully follow the original, dead-straight alignments laid down by Roman surveyors 2,000 years ago. Their empire eventually faded, but their fundamental approach to measuring and organizing the land became a permanent part of our world. While Rome measured the earth to build an empire of stone and law, another great civilization looked to the heavens to build an empire of the mind, mapping the cosmos with a precision that would not be matched for over 1,000 years. Within the silent, majestic halls of the Forbidden City, every dimension was a deliberate act of cosmic alignment. Master craftsmen worked with the chi, a unit of length that was far more than a simple ruler. It was a physical expression of a profound belief that human order must mirror the harmony of the heavens. This decimal-based system, dividing the chi into 10 kun and 100 fen, was a marvel of bureaucratic logic, making calculation and standardization remarkably efficient for a vast imperial administration. But its true purpose was deeper than mere convenience. The exact length of the chi was periodically redefined by imperial decree, an act that synchronized the empire's very fabric with celestial cycles and reaffirmed the emperor's sacred role as the link between heaven and earth. This was measurement as a spiritual and political duty. The ancient text, The Rites of Zhu, makes this explicit, detailing how standardized measures for length, volume, and weight were the bedrock of fair land distribution, predictable taxation, and the construction of public works like canals and granaries. These were not just economic tools, they were instruments of social stability, preventing conflict and ensuring the people's welfare. Artisans used specialized rulers, often inscribed with astrological symbols, to ensure that every roof beam, every courtyard, and every gateway was positioned and proportioned to optimize feng shui, the flow of vital energy. As the scholar Joseph Needham observed, Chinese metrology was a science of statecraft, designed to integrate human activity with the natural and celestial orders. This philosophical foundation had remarkably practical outcomes. The unwavering precision of the chi standard allowed for the mass production of interchangeable components for crossbow triggers and armor scales, a concept of standardized manufacturing that would not appear in the West for over 1,000 years. How did this deep connection between measurement and cosmic harmony influence China's enduring stability? It created a resilient system where accuracy was a form of virtue, and standardization was seen not as oppression, but as participation in a universal balance. This worldview, where a carpenter's ruler was a tool of cosmic order, stands in stark contrast to the pragmatic systems emerging in the West, and it invites a fascinating question. What happens when a civilization abandons this cosmic connection and instead seeks to create a perfect, universal standard derived not from the heavens or the human body, but from the very planet we stand on? The silent stones of Mohenjo-daro hold a riddle carved in stone and baked in clay. Across the vast expanse of the Indus Valley, from the great cities of Harappa to the distant port of Lothal, archaeologists have unearthed thousands of small, polished stone cubes. They are unmarked, their surfaces smooth and devoid of any inscription we can read. Yet these simple objects speak a universal language of mathematics and commerce. Their weights are not random, they follow a perfect repeating sequence, doubling each time. 1 unit, 2 units, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on. This is a binary system, a sophisticated progression that reveals a mind capable of abstract mathematical thought long before such concepts were formally recorded. The base unit was meticulous, approximately 13.7 grams. A standard so faithfully reproduced it hints at a central authority with the power to enforce uniformity across a civilization. This precision is echoed in the very bricks that built their cities. Fired clay bricks found in structures from one end of the Indus to the other are not just roughly similar. They are astonishingly uniform, consistently following a perfect ratio of 4 to 2 to 1 in their dimensions. A master builder from Harappa could have traveled to a city hundreds of miles away and found that the bricks there fit his construction plans perfectly. This was not a coincidence, it was the product of a deeply ingrained cultural standard, a shared understanding of measure that transcended local dialects and chieftains. As archaeologist Jonathan Mark Kenoyer suggests, this level of standardization is the hallmark of complex economic integration. It points to a form of central control over production and exchange, a system designed to build trust across vast distances. A merchant in the port city of Lothal could accept a shipment of goods from the interior, confident that the stone weights used to measure the cargo were identical to the set on his own scale. This mutual trust, verifiable through a shared metrology, was the glue of a wide-reaching trade network that stretched across the ancient world. Their written script remains a mystery, a locked door to their history and beliefs. But their weights and measures are an open window. They tell us of a people who valued order, fairness, and planning on a grand scale. What does it mean that we can understand the mathematics of their marketplace, yet cannot read a single word of their poetry? It suggests that the human drive to quantify, to standardize, to build a common understanding of the material world is a form of communication that can outlast language itself. This incredible legacy of precision, built without any decipherable records of kings or conquests, forces us to reconsider a fundamental question. Is the true measure of a civilization found in the words it leaves behind, or in the silent, perfect geometry of its bricks and the unwavering balance of its scales? Deep within the humid jungle, a priest astronomer tracked the slow drift of a star against a stone altar, notching a count that stretched far beyond a single lifetime. For the Maya, time was not a fleeting resource but a vast cyclical architecture, and they built a measurement system to map its every tier. They used a base 20, or Vigemal, counting system, a logical extension of counting on both fingers and toes. This created a cascade of temporal units, each one 20 times larger than the last. The kin was a single day. 20 kin made 1 yuanal, a month of 20 days. 18 yuanals, not 20, formed a ton of 360 days, aligning their count with the solar year. This pattern scaled up to immense spans, a katon of 7,200 days, nearly 20 years, and a bakton, a staggering 144,000 days, a cycle that defined entire world ages. This was not a calendar for planting corn. This was a tool for positioning human civilization within the cosmos. The completion of a backton was believed to mark the end of one great cycle of existence and the dawn of the next, infusing their history with a sense of recurring cosmic transformation. This grand vision of time was not kept secret on bark paper codices alone. It was physically engineered into the landscape. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of El Castillo is a masterwork of this fusion. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the interplay of sunlight and shadow creates the illusion of a massive serpent slithering down the northern staircase. The structure is a stone clock, its facets and steps precisely measured to capture these celestial moments, a permanent testament to their belief that architecture must reflect the rhythms of the sky. The epigrapher David Stewart's work Deciphering Maya Glyphs reveals how rulers consciously orchestrated their lives around this cosmic clock. A king would plan his ascension to the throne to coincide with the start of a new Khatan, believing this alignment would sanctify his rule with divine power. Major conflicts and ceremonial events were similarly timed, weaving the political narrative of the city-state directly into the fabric of their measured time. How does such a perspective shape a society's destiny? It creates a world where every human action is a note in a celestial symphony, where politics, architecture, and personal ambition are all subordinate to the grand, inexorable turn of the cosmic wheel. The intellectual leap required to conceive of and calculate these million-year cycles without any of the instruments we take for granted stands as one of history's most profound scientific achievements. They measured time itself not in days but in ages. On the sun-baked track at Olympia, the stadion was a race of pure, distilled human effort. The distance was a single length of the sacred precinct, 600 Greek feet, a measure that became the very name of the event and the space that contained it. Legend claimed the hero Heracles himself had stepped out this distance, forging a direct link between the sweat of the athlete and the world of myth. This was not merely a sporting event, it was a profound ritual. The officials, the Hellenodikai, were not just referees but guardians of a sacred standard, ensuring every runner competed on a course that was cosmically correct. The great philosopher Protagoras declared that man is the measure of all things, and here on this track, that idea was made breathtakingly real. The human body, in its pursuit of excellence, defined the space it conquered. As historian Nigel Spivey explains, the stadion was a dramatic performance of Greek ideals, of beauty, perfect proportion, and the relentless pursuit of arete, or personal excellence. The winner's name was etched into history, becoming a permanent marker in time. Later historians like Hippias of Elis used these lists of Olympic victors to create a unified chronology for the entire Greek world. A unit of distance measured by the human stride had somehow evolved into a tool for measuring the flow of centuries. How could a simple foot race achieve such a profound cultural feat? In a world of perpetually warring city-states, from democratic Athens to militaristic Sparta, the Olympic Games imposed a fragile but powerful unity. For the duration of the festival, all conflicts were suspended under a sacred truce. Athletes and spectators from every corner of the Hellenic world arrived to find that the track, the stadion itself, was a shared standard they all understood. They competed under the same rules, celebrated the same victors, and honored the same gods within a space defined by a universally acknowledged measure. This shared experience of measurement and competition wove a common thread of identity through a politically fractured landscape, proving that a civilization can be unified not only by laws and kings, but by a collective agreement on the length of a running track. This Greek synthesis of body, space, and time represents one of the most elegant solutions to the puzzle of measurement. Yet, it was a system destined to fade, its local variations and human-centric logic unable to withstand the rise of a new, more universal ambition. A future age would seek a standard derived not from the hero Heracles, but from the very planet Earth, a quest that would ultimately reshape the globe. Aboard a Viking longship, the Sea League was not a fixed distance on a map, but a living measure of time and motion. A s-jomil was the distance a ship could cover in 1 hour, a unit that changed with the wind, the current, and the strength of the rowers. This was measurement in its most fluid and practical form, a continuous calculation woven into the very act of sailing. The navigator standing at the prow was a master of environmental cues. He knew that certain seabirds would only fly a certain distance from their nesting cliffs, creating invisible circles of distance in the open ocean. He watched for the telltale spouts of whale pods, whose migratory paths were as reliable as any highway. He observed the subtle shift in the color and temperature of the water itself. All of these observations were his instruments, and the Sea League was his evolving ruler. This system required a profound intimacy with the natural world, a knowledge passed down through generations not in textbooks, but in the shared experience of the crew. The discovery of a wooden sun compass in Greenland offers a tantalizing glimpse into how they refined this art. This simple disc, with its carefully carved notches, allowed a navigator to track the sun's shadow at its highest point, giving him a rough but effective way to hold his east-west line. It was not a precision instrument for finding a new land, but a tool for staying on course toward a known one. As maritime archaeologist Søren Thursland suggests, Viking navigation was a science of observation and memory, where measurement was continuous and integrated with the environment. The sagas, like the King's Mirror, detail how sailors used the height of the midday sun and the length of the day to estimate their north-south position. A shorter day and a lower sun meant they were farther north. A longer day and a higher sun meant they were closer to the south. This was a crude form of gauging their place on the globe, yet it was effective enough to guide them to the shores of Iceland, Greenland, and even the edge of the North American continent. Their entire approach stands in stark contrast to the later quest for fixed, universal standards. The Viking system was built on trust in human skill and sensory awareness. It asked not for a perfect instrument, but for a perfect attention to the world. What does their incredible success tell us? It reveals that long before we mastered precision, we mastered perception. The greatest voyages of discovery were not just feats of engineering, but triumphs of a deeply integrated human intuition, a partnership between the measurer and the measured world. The Kasaba was more than a length of cord, it was a line of justice stretched across the earth. In the bustling markets of 9th century Baghdad, the precise length of this standard measure could settle a property dispute, calculate a farmer's tax on his wheat field, and uphold the principles of fairness central to Islamic law. This drive for precision was not confined to the land. It reached for the heavens, fueled by a profound fusion of faith and scientific curiosity. Within the legendary House of Wisdom, scholars saw the meticulous measurement of God's creation as an act of devotion. They refined instruments like the astrolabe, an intricate brass model of the sky that could tell time, calculate distances, and even determine the direction of prayer, the Qibla, for a mosque being built 1,000 miles from Mecca. This was a practical necessity born from spiritual duty, ensuring that every community, no matter how remote, was correctly oriented in its worship. The mathematician Al-Biruni embodied this quest. He devised a brilliantly simple yet powerful experiment to measure the entire world. From the summit of a mountain in India, he used a massive astrolabe to measure the angle of the horizon dipping below the horizontal. By combining this single angle with the mountain's known height, he calculated the Earth's curvature and, from that, its circumference. His result was within 1% of the value we know today, an astonishing feat of intellect achieved with little more than geometry and keen observation. His contemporary, Al-Khwarizmi, worked on a different kind of map. He compiled detailed geographical tables that standardized the distances between major cities across the vast Islamic empire. This was more than a traveler's guide. It was an early coordinated database for administration, trade, and scholarship, creating a shared understanding of a sprawling world. As the physicist Jim Al-Khalili notes for these scholars, the pursuit of accurate measurement was both a religious and scientific imperative. This holistic drive extended to the marketplace, where standardized weights like the rattle and volume measures like the saw built trust across immense trade networks that stretched from Cordoba to Canton. A merchant in Damascus could be confident that a contract written in Samarkand referred to the same quantity of goods. How did this fusion of duty, law, and inquiry produce such advanced systems? It created a culture where precision was a virtue that served both God and community, weaving a seamless thread between the cosmic and the commercial, a legacy of integrated knowledge that would one day help reawaken scientific thought in Europe. The silent stones of Callanish and Stonehenge hold a secret geometry. Across the windswept landscapes of prehistoric Europe, from the Scottish Isles to the coast of Brittany, the great stone circles were built to a common measure. After decades of meticulous survey, engineer Alexander Thom identified a mysterious unit repeated with uncanny consistency, a length he called the megalithic yard, approximately 2.72 feet. This was not a rough approximation. The recurrence of this exact measurement across hundreds of sites separated by vast distances suggests something astonishing. A shared standard of length established thousands of years before standardized measurement was thought possible. The builders did not simply use this yard to lay out simple circles. They employed it in complex geometrical figures, crafting precise ellipses and setting stones in perfect Pythagorean triangles, shapes defined by the exact ratios of their sides. This reveals a sophisticated understanding of mathematics, applied to earth and stone on a monumental scale. How could such knowledge exist in a supposedly primitive era? Thom himself concluded that this precision implied the existence of a specialized class, a megalithic priesthood or a guild of skilled surveyors. These individuals would have traveled between scattered communities, carrying the standard of the megalithic yard and the advanced knowledge of how to use it. The purpose of this precision was written in the sky. The astronomical alignments of these sites, which mark the solstices and equinoxes with breathtaking accuracy, could only function if the underlying geometry was flawless. A consistent unit of measurement was the absolute prerequisite for this cosmic architecture, linking the rituals of an agricultural society directly to the turning of the seasons. Some researchers, like John Mitchell, have wondered if the megalithic yard was more than a human convention. They suggest it may represent a fundamental harmonic of the Earth's own dimensions, a natural standard discovered by ancient minds deeply attuned to the rhythms of their world rather than one they invented. The persistence of this single unit across centuries and cultures poses a profound question. What extraordinary cultural cohesion, what silent language of knowledge, allowed a prehistoric standard to be maintained so faithfully, ensuring that a circle built in Wales and a ring raised in Orkney were born from the same invisible ruler? The enigma of the megalithic yard stands as a silent challenge to our modern assumptions, reminding us that the drive to measure and unify is a human impulse far older than history itself. The resonance of the megalithic yard fades into the quiet precision of a Japanese woodworking studio. Here, the master carpenter's hand does not rush. His tool is the kainjoku, a wooden L-shaped square, its surface etched with the elegant characters for shoku, sun, and bu. This was the Shakun-ho system, a metrology woven from the very substance of life. The fundamental unit, the shoku, was born not in a royal chamber but in a bamboo grove. It was the length between the nodes on a bamboo stalk, a naturally occurring, renewable standard that tied human endeavor directly to the rhythm of plant growth. This unit, approximately 30.3 centimeters, was then subdivided into 10 sun and 100 bu, creating a decimal logic that flowed as naturally as a branching stream. This system was the invisible heart of Japanese aesthetics. Its most famous application governs the space you walk upon, the tatami mat. These rectangular mats, standardized to a precise ratio of 2 shoku by 1 shoku, were not just floor coverings. They were modular units that defined the dimensions of an entire room. A tea ceremony room might be 4.5 mats, a reception room 8. This modular grid imposed a profound harmony, or wa, on domestic and sacred architecture alike. It ensured that every space, from the humblest farmhouse to the most majestic temple, was built to a human scale that felt intuitively correct and deeply peaceful. The proportions dictated by the shoku created a visual and spatial rhythm that is instantly recognizable as Japanese. The secrets of this harmony were carefully guarded. In texts like the Secret Traditions of the Carpenters' Guild, master builders recorded the sacred geometries and precise measurements needed to raise a structure that was both physically sound and spiritually balanced. The joinery of a temple roof, with its complex interlocking brackets, relied on shoku measurements cut with absolute fidelity. A misfit of a single bu could compromise the entire framework. This was not merely construction, it was a disciplined practice where precision was a form of reverence. As historian David Whitner notes, the Shakun-ho was more than a tool. It was a cultural code that embedded traditional values into the very fabric of the built environment. The system proved incredibly resilient, remaining Japan's official measurement for over 1,000 years and only being formally replaced in 1924. How did a ruler based on a bamboo stalk contribute to such enduring beauty? It forced a partnership with nature, not a conquest over it. The carpenter had to understand the grain of the wood, just as he understood the divisions on his kenjaku. This intimate relationship between the measurer, the material, and the measure itself resulted in an architecture that feels organic and eternally settled in its landscape. The Shakun-ho system represents a path where measurement served not empire and economics first, but cultural preservation and spiritual alignment. It asks us a subtle but powerful question. In our quest for universal, impersonal standards, what profound connections between our creations and the natural world have we inadvertently measured out of existence? High on an Andean terrace, an Inca surveyor stretched a knotted cord between 2 posts, measuring the land not by its length, but by its life. This was the Topo, a unit that refused to be constant. On a gentle, fertile slope, 1 Topo might cover a large area, while on a barren, precipitous one, the same measure would represent a much smaller, more difficult plot. The system was brilliant in its equity. A farmer was not taxed on the raw, geometric size of his land, but on its productive potential. It was a measurement of yield, not of yards, acknowledging the harsh reality of the mountains and creating a fair system of tribute for the empire. This flexible ruler was the domain of the Quipu, the revered keepers of the knotted records. Using the Quipu, a complex array of colored and knotted strings, these administrators could record everything from population counts to grain stores, all encoded in a language of numbers tied with precision. Anthropologist Gary Urton's research suggests the Quipu may have used a binary-like system, where the direction of a knot's spin and the placement of its chords created a sophisticated data storage device capable of managing the logistics of a vast state. This was an empire run on knots, a civilization quantified without a single written word. The ultimate expression of this philosophy is Machu Picchu itself. Its breathtaking terraces are not forced onto the mountain, they are a conversation with it. Each wall, each stairway, each building conforms to the contours of the ridge, using measurement not to conquer the landscape, but to collaborate with it. The units of construction respected the mountain's own form, creating a settlement that appears to have grown from the stone. This harmony extended to the sky. From observatories like the Torreon at Machu Picchu, sight lines to stone pillars on the horizon marked the solstices and equinoxes, anchoring their spatial measurements to the sacred time of the agricultural cycle. How did a system this fluid hold together an empire stretching over 2,000 miles? The answer lies in its radical pragmatism. The Incas understood that true precision is not always about rigid standards, but about the intelligent application of rules to a complex and living world. Their measurement was a form of listening, an adaptable tool that allowed them to build one of history's most integrated and resilient states, all without the wheel, without iron, and without an alphabet. A royal courier's mission began not with a map, but with a schedule measured in parasangs. Galloping from Susa toward Sardis, his path was defined by this unique unit of distance, one that refused to be a simple, static length. The Persian Parisang was not a geometric measure of the land itself, but a measure of human effort across it, representing the distance a loaded caravan could cover in a single day's march, roughly 3.5 miles. This was measurement engineered for logistics, for turning a 1,500-mile ribbon of road into a predictable, manageable system. King Darius I did not just build a highway, he built a nervous system for his empire, and the Parasang was its fundamental pulse. Along the royal road, way stations were placed at intervals calculated in these units, creating a chain of rest and resupply that allowed a message to cross from the heart of Persia to the Aegean coast in just 7 days. This was an administrative marvel, a communication network of unprecedented speed and reliability. The Greek historian Herodotus stood in awe of this system, and his writings meticulously catalogued the empire's routes in parasangs, giving us a traveler's log of the ancient world. But the true power of this measure extended far beyond the speed of a courier. The parasang was the key to imperial economics. Satraps, the provincial governors, were required to send tribute to the capital, and the assessment of their territories for taxation relied on surveys conducted with this standard unit. A province's wealth was not just its raw acreage, but its traversable, productive space as measured in the day marches of the parasang. The genius of the system was its flexibility across geography. One parasang across the flat Mesopotamian plain covered more ground than one parasang through the rugged highlands of Anatolia, yet both represented the same investment of time and energy for a traveler or a tax collector. This acknowledged the real cost of moving through a diverse empire. As historian Pierre Bryant observed, the parasang was the spatial expression of Achaemenid power, a unit that made the empire knowable and governable. Why did a measure of travel time prove more effective than a fixed geometric standard for ruling a pre-modern empire? Because it prioritized practical reality over abstract perfection. It measured the empire not as it looked on a hypothetical map, but as it was actually experienced and administered, factoring in the very friction of the land itself. This logistical brilliance ensured that a single standard could unite a world of difference, proving that the most powerful ruler is not the one with the longest yardstick, but the one whose measure most intelligently comprehends the challenges of the territory. A continent is measured not in steps but in stanzas. For the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, the land itself is a living story, and the songlines are its verses. These are not mere tracks across the desert, but intricate pathways of memory and lore, where every landmark, every waterhole, every distinctive tree is encoded within a specific sequence of song. The unit of distance here is the musical phrase that carries you from one sacred place to the next. To walk a songline is to sing the world into being with every step, retracing the creative journeys of the ancestral beings from the dreaming. This act of navigation is a profound responsibility, a ceremonial practice that maintains the connection between the people and the land. As the writer Bruce Chatwin documented, this oral cartography formed a vast, invisible network that could guide a traveler across thousands of miles of seemingly featureless terrain. The system's astonishing precision is rooted in an uncompromising cultural requirement. The song must be performed with perfect fidelity. A misremembered word or a forgotten verse is not a simple mistake. It is a spiritual and practical error that could lead to becoming truly lost. In this worldview, knowledge is the ultimate and most reliable standard of measure. This challenges our most basic assumptions about what it means to quantify the world. Here, measurement is not an act of abstraction, but of deep participatory belonging. It is a narrative and spiritual practice that weaves direction, distance, and moral law into a single, unforgettable melody. The songline offers a breathtakingly different answer to the human need to find our way. It asks us to consider if a map can be written not on parchment, but in the human heart, and if the truest measure of a space is not its length, but the depth of its story. That long, narrow strip of earth defined a world. The medieval acre was not an abstract block on a surveyor's map, but the physical result of a day's labor, the distance a team of oxen could pull a plow before needing rest. This was the furrow long, a practical measure born from the rhythm of breath and muscle. Turning a heavy ox team was a slow, difficult process, so the long strip maximized productive work and minimized wasted effort. This simple fact of animal power dictated the shape of the English countryside for generations. The entire village economy was woven from these strips. A family's holding was not a single, neat field, but a collection of these scattered acre strips intermingled with those of their neighbors across the open fields. This was not by accident, but by design. It ensured every household received a fair mix of fertile soil and poorer ground, of sun-facing slopes and shaded lowlands. This communal distribution created a landscape of shared fate, where your success was tied to the success of those who plowed the strips beside yours. The manorial court guarded the standard of the acre with immense seriousness. Using rods and perches, local officials would measure each strip, their accuracy recorded in meticulous documents like the Great Domesday Book. This was measurement as a public ritual, a reaffirmation of communal rights and responsibilities that everyone could witness and understand. As historian H.S. Bennett noted, the acre was the fundamental cell of medieval rural life, its measurement a communal activity that reinforced social bonds. The ghost of this system is still with us. From the air, the outlines of these ancient strips can sometimes be seen etched into the modern landscape, a faint but persistent memory of a world ordered by the plow. How did a unit born from the limitations of animal power come to structure society, law, and the very land itself? It reveals that our most enduring measurement systems are never just technical tools. They are living artifacts of how a society solves its most basic problems of fairness and survival. This deep connection between measure and community raises a pivotal question for our own era. What happens when that tangible link is severed, when the standard is no longer your neighbor's stride or a day's plowing, but an unchanging bar of metal locked in a distant vault? A single camel's load could determine the fate of a city. In the vast silence of the Sahara, the economics of continents were not measured in coins or fixed weights, but in the living, breathing capacity of the dromedary. A standard camel load, a unit that balanced the animal's strength against the harshness of the journey, became the fundamental currency of the trans-Saharan trade. This measure was not a rigid number. It varied with the camel's health, the season, and the specific terrain of the route, demanding an intimate, practical wisdom from every merchant and guide. They knew precisely how to balance sacks of salt or blocks of gold using standardized baskets that constituted one load, an art that integrated the biology of the animal with the relentless logic of commerce. The famous 14th century traveler Ibn Battuta described caravans that moved like slow rivers across the dunes, comprising thousands of these animals, their entire economy governed by this fluid, practical unit. In the emptiness of the desert, there were no royal inspectors to verify measures. The system operated on a foundation of personal trust and reputation. A merchant's word on the count and condition of his loads was his bond, a promise made under a sun that showed no mercy. The profitability of an epic journey from a salt mine like Taghaza to a gold-bearing region like Wangara hinged on accurately estimating the exchange rate between a load of one precious commodity and a load of another. The camel, therefore, was far more than a beast of burden. It was a living, walking instrument of economic measurement. How does an economy function when its primary unit is the endurance of a living creature rather than an abstract, perfect standard? It creates a system of profound adaptability, one that bends to the reality of the environment rather than trying to conquer it. This was measurement in dialogue with the desert itself, a reminder that the most resilient standards are often those that acknowledge the world's inherent variability. A new bronze vessel arrived in every provincial town, its capacity fixed by royal decree. This was the Po, a standard measure for grain that became the heartbeat of the Joseon dynasty's ambitious reforms. Under the guidance of King Sejong the Great, the Korean state launched a meticulous project to unify its measurement, distributing official bronze standards for the Po, the Ya for length, and the Jun for weight to every local magistrate. These were not mere tools, they were instruments of justice, designed to root out corruption in the marketplace and ensure that taxation was levied fairly upon the common people. Detailed manuals accompanied them, instructing local officials on their proper use, transforming abstract ideals of good governance into a tangible, repeatable practice. This was a profound act of centralization, yet its purpose was deeply benevolent. By creating a single, trustworthy standard for the entire kingdom, the state aimed to stabilize the economy and protect its citizens from the hardship of arbitrary measures. The commitment to precision extended from the granary to the very skies. The invention of the Chugyugi, a standardized bronze rain gauge, was a landmark achievement. Installed at stations across the country, it allowed officials to collect precise precipitation data, creating one of the world's first long-term meteorological records. This information was vital for agricultural planning and for preparing state granaries to provide relief in times of drought or flood. As historian James B. Paley noted, the Joseon state's obsession with accurate measurement was a cornerstone of its Confucian ideology, which emphasized order, hierarchy, and correct relationships. This philosophical drive for harmony through precision fueled remarkable technological advances. In the royal court, the Jajongnu, an automated water clock, marked the passage of time through a meticulously measured flow of water, its complex mechanism of scoops and bells operating without human intervention. How did the conscious act of standardizing measurement contribute to a cultural and scientific golden age in Korea? It provided the stable, reliable foundation upon which innovation could be built. The Joseon case presents a powerful vision of measurement not as an act of control for its own sake, but as the essential instrument of enlightened statecraft, weaving fairness, scientific inquiry, and administrative competence into a single, enduring system. The choice of 60 was a stroke of mathematical genius. In the bustling administrative centers of Babylon, scribes needed a system that could handle fractions with ease, whether they were calculating interest on a loan or the movement of a planet. The number 60, with its 12 divisors, was their perfect solution. It could be split into halves, thirds, quarters, fifths, sixths, tenths, and more, all without producing messy, endless fractions. This made it the ideal tool for dividing up parcels of land and, more lastingly, for mapping the heavens. Their astronomical records, like the Venus tablet of Amasajuka, track the planet's cycles with a clarity that relies entirely on this base 60 framework. They did not just observe the sky, they quantified its rhythms with a precision that would not be surpassed for centuries. This system's true power was its portability. Greek astronomers, and later the great Claudius Ptolemy, inherited the Babylonian sexagesimal system and embedded it into the very heart of their models of the cosmos. Islamic scholars then preserved and refined these texts, passing this mathematical torch to medieval Europe, where it became the bedrock for the trigonometry that guided ships across uncharted oceans. The division of the circle into 360 degrees is perhaps the most visible monument to their work, a number that may have originated from their early estimate of the solar year as 360 days with 5 extra days set apart. Why has this 4,000-year-old system refused to fade away? The historian of mathematics Otto Neugebauer called it the most enduring gift of Babylon to the world, and for good reason. Its elegant divisibility created a universal language for time and space, a framework so practical and resilient that it still structures our most fundamental interactions with the universe, from reading a clock to plotting a course. This was not merely a numerical convention, it was a conceptual scaffold that allowed human knowledge to build upwards, generation after generation. The Hekat was more than a measure of grain, it was the steady heartbeat of the Egyptian state. In the vast royal granaries, scribes hunched over their papyrus, their reed pens scratching out the precise volume of every delivery. Each entry, recorded in hekats, represented the lifeblood of the nation, the emmer wheat and barley that would feed the army, pay the artisans, and sustain the court. This was a command economy built not on gold, but on the reliable yield of the Nile's fertile soil. The annual inundation was both a blessing and a monumental logistical challenge, requiring the state to calculate, store, and distribute this agricultural wealth with unerring accuracy. A miscalculation could mean hardship, a shortfall could lead to instability. The Moscow Mathematical Papyrus offers a glimpse into the mind of an Egyptian accountant, presenting problems like calculating the volume of a cylindrical granary. For a scribe, mastering the geometry of a curved silo in hekats was not an abstract exercise. It was a vital skill for ensuring the kingdom's food security. To make these fractions tangible, the Egyptians used a system of standardized vessels, each marked with specific capacity, and they encoded this mathematics in myth, using the parts of the Eye of Horus hieroglyph to represent a binary series of fractions, 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, and so on. This was measurement woven into the sacred, where a practical calculation was also a symbolic act. As barter economist John R. Huddlestone notes, the Hekat was the fundamental unit that connected the peasant's labor to the state's power. It was the invisible thread that quantified a farmer's contribution and translated it into the rations that sustained the worker building a pharaoh's tomb. The incredible efficiency of this system, this relentless, precise counting of hekats, generated the vast surplus required to feed the thousands of laborers who raised the pyramids. It supported a specialized class of priests, soldiers, and officials who did not farm, but whose roles were made possible by this measured abundance. How did the precise quantification of a simple commodity like grain become the engine of such an enduring civilization? The answer lies in the profound understanding that to control the harvest was to control destiny itself, transforming the chaotic bounty of nature into a predictable, manageable resource that could fund wonders and secure a kingdom for millennia. A merchant in a 13th century Italian port could perform a calculation in seconds that would have taken his grandfather an hour. The secret was not a new unit of measure, but a new way of writing numbers themselves. The Hindu-Arabic numeral system, with its elegant digits from 1 to 9 and its revolutionary placeholder 0, provided the indispensable language for a world ready to be measured with precision. This was a silent, conceptual revolution that changed everything. Unlike the unwieldy Roman numerals, which made multiplication and division a specialist's art, this positional decimal system turned complex arithmetic into a process anyone could learn. The value of a digit depended on its place, and an empty column was no longer a confusion but a clear statement of nothing, a 0. This abstract concept, which had blossomed from philosophical traditions in India, became the most practical of tools. Its journey westward was a story of intellectual transmission. The Persian scholar al-Khwarizmi, working in the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, wrote his foundational text on the calculation with Hindu numerals, systematically explaining the methods of arithmetic using these new symbols. His name, Latinized, would give us the word algorithm, a testament to the structured thinking this system enabled. In the Islamic world, these numerals were refined and applied to the precise calculations required for astronomy, for mapping the stars, and for the advanced optics that explained how light traveled. Then, in 1202, the Italian mathematician Fibonacci published his Liber Abaci, the Book of Calculation. He did not write for scholars, but for the bustling commercial class. He demonstrated how these new numbers could effortlessly handle the messy calculations of daily business, from calculating profit margins and interest on loans to converting between a dozen different currencies. Every one of these transactions was, at its heart, an act of measurement, and Fibonacci showed that this new numerical language made that measurement faster, more reliable, and far more powerful. As the science historian George Gevorgys Joseph noted, the adoption of these numerals was the silent partner to every scientific revolution that followed. They were the blank slate and the perfect grammar that allowed Tycho Brahe to record the positions of planets with unwavering accuracy, creating the data pool from which new models of the cosmos could be drawn. This same system provided the foundational notation that allowed Newton and Leibniz independently to develop the language of calculus, a tool for measuring continuous change itself. How did an abstract notation, born from a different philosophical tradition, become the universal language for quantifying the physical world? It succeeded because it was not just a set of symbols, but a fluid and logical system of thought. It was the hidden key that turned measurement from a description of things into a language for predicting their behavior, unlocking the door to modern precision and the very idea of a quantifiable universe. A Portuguese caravel's captain would not merely sail south, he would log his progress in meticulous leagues, each one a calculated guess at speed and time scribbled onto a vellum chart. This maritime league was the unit of ambition for a small kingdom pushing into the void of the Atlantic. Their success depended on a new generation of tools that transformed the open ocean from a realm of myth into a quantifiable space. The cross-staff and its later refinement, the backstaff, allowed a navigator to measure the sun's height above the horizon at its peak. This single angle, carefully measured, gave him his latitude, his north-south position on the globe. It was a revolutionary leap from simply following a coastline to plotting a course across thousands of miles of open water. At Prince Henry, the navigator's legendary school at Sagres, this data was not just collected, it was systematized. Pilots returning from voyages contributed their logs, their recorded leagues, their notes on currents and wind patterns. This growing body of knowledge became a closely guarded state secret, a strategic asset as valuable as any spice cargo. The Cantino planisphere of 1502 is a snapshot of this measured world in progress, covered in room lines radiating from compass roses and decorated with detailed scale bars. It is a patchwork of known coastlines and speculative voids, all framed by the new language of precise navigation. As the historian of cartography J.B. Harley observed, the Portuguese did not just discover new lands, they invented a new way of measuring and representing the world. This quantitative approach turned the immense risk of a voyage to India into a calculated enterprise. The cost of ships, the duration of the journey, and the potential value of the return cargo could now be estimated with a confidence never before possible. This logistical certainty is what enabled the first truly global trade networks, shifting the center of economic power from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic seaboard. The Portuguese Maritime League was more than a unit of distance. It was the first stitch in a new global fabric, a system of measurement that began to bind the entire planet into a single, interconnected map of commerce and control. The master's stamp on a finished sword was a promise etched in steel. It was not a choice but a requirement, granted only after the guild's wardens had inspected the blade, verifying its weight, its length, and the quality of its metal against the official iron rod and brass weights kept under lock and key in the guild hall. This was the heart of the medieval European system, where measurement was the key to both reputation and monopoly. In cities like Florence or Cologne, the official ell for measuring cloth and the sealed bushel for grain were more than tools of trade. They were the very pillars of a closed economic world. A weaver could not sell his cloth unless it measured the correct width and length according to the local standard. A baker's loaf had to conform to a legally fixed weight, as detailed in ordinances like England's assize of bread and ale, which tied the price and size of a loaf directly to the fluctuating cost of grain. This intricate web of rules served a dual purpose. On one hand, it was a powerful form of consumer protection, ensuring that people received what they paid for in an age without national regulatory bodies. On the other, it was a deliberate wall against outside competition. By enforcing a unique local standard, a guild could effectively bar merchants from a neighboring town from easily selling their goods, protecting the livelihoods of their own members. This created a Europe of 1,000 different measures, where a pint of wine in Paris was not the same as a pint in Genoa. As economic historian Stephen Epstein noted, guilds used measurement to create a walled garden of economic privilege and technical excellence. The entire journey of a craftsman, from lowly apprentice to respected master, was governed by this metered precision. To create his masterpiece and gain entry into the guild, a young silversmith had to demonstrate that he could work to the exacting standards of weight and purity that the guild demanded. This process ritualized economic life, making the act of measuring a public ceremony that reinforced communal bonds and a shared sense of identity. But this intense localization came at a cost. How could a merchant from Venice plan a large-scale trade with a partner in Bruges when the units of measure were a confusing, unpredictable variable? This very confusion hindered the growth of a truly continent-wide market, locking capital and innovation within city walls. The system empowered local craftsmanship to reach incredible heights of quality, yet it constrained the broader economic development of the continent. This tension between local perfection and global exchange would eventually force a revolution, not in the marketplace, but in the very standards that ruled it. The king's foot was literally broken. In the feverish aftermath of the French Revolution, the old units of the monarchy, like the pied du roi, were not just abolished, they were vilified as instruments of oppression. The chaotic patchwork of provincial measures, which could vary from one town to the next, had long been a tool for the nobility and the tax collectors to exploit the common people. A farmer might owe a bushel of grain, but the size of that bushel was determined by his local lord. This was a world where measurement itself was a form of control. The revolutionaries sought to smash this entire framework, to build a new world from the ground up, and they began with the very ruler used to measure it. They declared a new system, one they proclaimed was for all people, for all time, a standard that belonged not to a king, but to the earth itself. This was the birth of the metric system, and it was an act of profound political and philosophical rebellion. The new fundamental unit, the meter, was defined with breathtaking ambition. It was to be 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the North Pole to the equator, a length derived not from a monarch's whim, but from the planet's own dimensions. This was the ultimate divorce of measurement from human authority, an attempt to anchor human affairs in the eternal and the universal. To turn this grand idea into reality, two brilliant astronomers, Pierre Méchain and Jean-Baptiste de Lambert, were given a heroic, almost impossible task. They were to measure the meridian arc from Dunkirk in the north to Barcelona in the south, a perilous journey through a landscape still torn by revolution and war. For 7 long years, they triangulated across hills and valleys, setting up their surveying equipment on church towers and mountain peaks, often under suspicion as spies. Machan's portion of the survey was plagued by illness and a crucial, haunting error in his initial calculations that he desperately tried to conceal, a personal tragedy shadowing the grand scientific endeavor. Their mission was as much a political statement as a scientific one, a concrete demonstration that the new republic could harness reason to reshape reality. The resulting system was a masterpiece of Enlightenment logic. It was decimal through and through. The liter was defined as the volume of a cube 1/10 of a meter on each side. The gram was the mass of 1 cubic centimeter of water. Every unit was elegantly interconnected, creating a framework that made complex calculations simpler than ever before. The philosopher Condorcet saw this as more than mere convenience. He proclaimed it a tool to break the chains of error and prejudice, believing that a rational system of measurement would foster a more rational and equitable society. How did the act of redefining a ruler become a symbol of a new social order? It declared that fairness and reason should be the foundation of human interaction, replacing arbitrary power with a universal constant. Of course, people resisted. They were attached to their familiar feet and pounds, but the logic of the system was undeniable, and its spread was accelerated by Napoleon's armies, who carried it across Europe, and by the rising international community of scientists who needed a common language for their work. The creation of the meter was the ultimate triumph of abstraction, a declaration that humanity could agree on a standard that transcended every border, every culture, and every king. This quest for a perfect, natural standard, however, was about to encounter a new and restless force, one that would demand a different kind of precision altogether, measured not in the quiet arc of a meridian, but in the relentless, thrumming rhythm of a machine. The clatter of a rifle lock echoed through the Springfield Armory, but this was a new kind of sound. It was the sound of a part, any part, fitting perfectly into place. Inside the burgeoning factories of the 19th century, the old world of hand-fitted craftsmanship was colliding with a new demand for absolute uniformity. The ambitious concept of interchangeable parts required a precision that the foot and the cubit could never provide. It demanded a new language of measurement, one spoken in thousandths of an inch. While Illy Whitney's famous demonstration of assembling muskets from random parts was more theatrical promise than immediate reality, the idea itself was revolutionary. It declared that every component, from the smallest screw to the most complex trigger mechanism, had to be made to an exact, predetermined standard, a master pattern against which all others were measured. This was the birth of the American system of manufactures, and its heart was a new tool, the precision gauge. These hardened steel blocks, polished to a mirror finish, became the unchanging law of the factory floor. A worker could now check his work not against a subjective feel, but against an objective, physical truth. The vernier caliper and the micrometer screw gave machinists the ability to see dimensions that were once invisible, to control variations smaller than the width of a human hair. This new class of artisans, the precision machinists, were the high priests of this new order, their skill measured by their ability to converse with these instruments. The British engineer Joseph Whitworth understood that precision was useless without uniformity. He looked at the chaos of his nation's workshops, where every manufacturer used its own unique screw thread, and saw an industrial Tower of Babel. His campaign to standardize a single thread form across British industry was a monumental act of simplification. It meant that a bolt made in one factory would now fit a nut made in another, eliminating endless waste and frustration. As the historian David A. Hounshell observed, the relentless drive for interchangeability was the very engine that created modern precision measurement. This was no longer measurement for building monuments or surveying fields. This was measurement for building systems, for creating complex machines that could be assembled, repaired, and replicated on an unimaginable scale. How did this factory-born obsession with perfect tolerance reshape our world? It silently engineered the modern landscape of abundance, making the sewing machine, the bicycle, and eventually the automobile not luxuries for the few, but accessible goods for the many. The industrial age had forged a new reality, one where the measure of progress was no longer in grand monuments, but in the countless, identical, and perfectly fitting parts of a new machine-made world. The story of measurement is the story of civilization itself, a relentless human quest to impose order, fairness, and understanding onto a beautifully chaotic world. We have walked with the Egyptian surveyor and his sacred cubit, stood beside the Mesopotamian merchant and his trusted shekel weight, and traced the songlines of Aboriginal Australia, where the land itself is measured in memory and melody. Each system, from the flexible Inca Topo to the decimal logic of the Chinese Kai, reveals a unique facet of how a society perceives and organizes its reality. These were not neutral tools, they were profound expressions of cultural values, political power, and cosmological beliefs, whether encoded in the harmonious proportions of a Japanese temple or the bureaucratic precision of a Korean rain gauge. Their legacy is written into the very grammar of our modern world, in the 60 minutes of our hour, the 360 degrees of a circle, and the decimal foundation of our global economy. As we now navigate an age of quantum standards and satellite precision, let us pause to remember the breathtaking ingenuity of those who first dared to measure the world with nothing but their own bodies, the stars above, and an unwavering faith in a universal order. The next time you glance at a ruler or check the time on your phone, see them not as mundane instruments, but as the living descendants of these great historical experiments. If this journey has changed how you see the ordinary tools around you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to continue uncovering the hidden histories that quietly shape our